In the summer of 1943, Adolf Hitler stood at a crossroads. 6 months earlier, his armies had been shattered at Stalingrad. Over 300,000 German soldiers were dead, wounded, or captured. It was the first time an entire German field army had been destroyed. Across Europe, resistance movements grew bolder. In Berlin, senior officers whispered doubts behind closed doors. For the first time since 1939, the aura of Nazi invincibility had cracked. But Hitler refused to accept that the tide of war had turned. He believed Germany still had one decisive chance to regain control of the Eastern Front. That chance was Kursk. On the map, Kursk appeared as a massive bulge in Soviet lines, pushing westward into German-held territory. Inside that bulge were hundreds of thousands of Red Army troops, vast stockpiles of equipment, and key rail connections that supplied Soviet forces across the front. Hitler saw an opportunity to repeat his early war successes, a classic double encirclement. Two massive German armies would strike from the north and south, meet behind Soviet lines, and destroy everything inside the pocket. If successful, the Soviets would lose an entire army group, and Germany would regain strategic momentum. The plan was named Operation Citadel. But even before the first shot was fired, the seeds of failure were planted. Hitler hesitated. His generals urged him to attack immediately, before the Soviets could strengthen their defenses. But Hitler wanted perfection. He delayed the offensive for months, waiting for new weapons, Tiger tanks, Panther tanks, and massive Ferdinand tank destroyers. He believed these machines would be unstoppable. In his mind, technology would replace strategy, and superior firepower would crush Soviet resistance. This delay would prove fatal. While Hitler waited, the Soviets prepared with ruthless efficiency. Soviet intelligence had cracked German radio codes and received information from spies inside German headquarters. They knew exactly where the attack would come, when it would begin, and which units would lead it. Instead of being surprised, the Red Army transformed Kursk into a fortress. More than 300,000 civilians were mobilized to dig defenses. They carved the earth into miles of trenches, anti-tank ditches, foxholes, and concrete bunkers. Entire villages were turned into strongpoints. Over 3 million mines were planted, creating deadly kill zones designed to rip apart armored columns. Artillery batteries were hidden behind ridgelines. Anti-tank guns were camouflaged in tree lines. Tank units were held in deep reserve, waiting to counterattack. Every road was mapped. Every approach was covered by overlapping fields of fire. Kursk became the most heavily defended position in military history. By July 1943, the Red Army was ready. On July 5th, the German assault finally began. Nearly 900,000 Axis troops advanced, supported by 2,700 tanks and assault guns, along with more than 2,000 aircraft. It was the largest armored offensive ever attempted. At dawn, German artillery thundered across the plains. Stuka dive bombers screamed from the sky. Hitler believed this would be the moment Germany turned the war around. Instead, it became the beginning of the end. German tanks rolled forward and immediately hit minefields. Explosions tore through armored columns. Vehicles burned. Crews scrambled out, only to be cut down by machine gun fire. Engineers rushed forward to clear paths, but were slaughtered by Soviet artillery. Every kilometer of ground cost blood. Progress was slow, grinding, and brutal. The German advance quickly lost its rhythm as supply lines stretched thin and fuel shortages worsened. In the north, General Model's Ninth Army stalled almost immediately. Soviet anti-tank guns picked off Panthers and Tigers. German infantry was shredded by entrenched machine guns. The advance slowed to a crawl. Units that were supposed to advance miles in a single day barely moved a few hundred meters. Morale began to collapse as soldiers realized they were walking into a trap. In the south, Field Marshal Manstein achieved deeper penetrations, but at an enormous cost. Entire battalions were wiped out for small patches of land. German commanders requested reinforcements that never came. The further they advanced, the more isolated they became. Soviet resistance only grew stronger the deeper they pushed. The battlefield turned into hell. Then came Prokhorovka. On July 12th, two massive tank forces collided in one of the most violent armored battles in history. Over 1,200 tanks clashed at point-blank range. Dust choked the air. Smoke blinded gunners. Tanks fired so close they rammed each other. Crews burned alive inside their vehicles. Shells exploded non-stop. The ground shook beneath their tracks. Many soldiers later said it felt like the earth itself was tearing apart. It wasn't a battle of tactics anymore. It was raw survival. For hours, neither side gave ground. But the Soviets had what Germany no longer possessed: reserves. Fresh tank brigades poured into the fight. German units, exhausted and depleted, had nothing left to give. When night fell, the battlefield was littered with wrecked armor and burning hulks. Behind the scenes, something even worse happened for Hitler. The Allies invaded Sicily. British and American forces landed in Italy, opening a new front in Europe. Hitler panicked. He feared Italy would collapse and the Allies would pour north into Germany's soft underbelly. Against his general's advice, he made a catastrophic decision. He ordered Operation Citadel halted. Right in the middle of the battle, German units were forced to stop advancing. The momentum vanished instantly. Soviet commanders wasted no time. Massive counteroffensives erupted along the entire front. Fresh Red Army divisions surged forward, smashing exhausted German units. What had been a German offensive turned into a desperate retreat. Now the hunters became the hunted. Soviet forces pushed westward, retaking territory lost years earlier. Entire German divisions were encircled. Equipment was abandoned. Roads filled with retreating soldiers. Prisoners were taken by the tens of thousands. The Red Army had learned from its earlier disasters. Tanks, infantry, artillery, and aircraft now worked together with terrifying efficiency. For the first time, the Soviets were not just surviving. They were dominating. Germany could not recover. The Battle of Kursk was over. The casualties were staggering. Germany lost over 200,000 men and more than 500 tanks, including many of their precious new models. The Soviets lost more, but they could replace them. Germany could not. Its industry was stretched thin. Fuel shortages worsened. Veteran soldiers were gone forever. From this moment on, Germany would never launch another major offensive on the Eastern Front. The initiative was lost. Forever. Hitler had gambled everything on Kursk and lost. His generals knew it. The Red Army knew it. The world knew it. From then on, Soviet forces advanced relentlessly. Ukraine was liberated, then Belarus, then Poland. Eastern Europe collapsed into Soviet hands. German cities fell one by one. 2 years later, Soviet troops would storm Berlin itself. Kursk didn't just change the war, it ended Germany's chance to win it. Hitler's obsession with superweapons, his refusal to listen to commanders, and his need for a dramatic victory sealed his fate. The delay he ordered allowed the Soviets to turn Kursk into a trap. What was meant to be Germany's comeback became its final collapse. Stalingrad broke the myth. Kursk broke the army. After that summer, Nazi Germany was finished. It just didn't know it yet.